We get into the landowner's business. We do have one item we wanted to discuss with the board and all of you, and I'll have Dwayne lead us in that.
In essence, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act requires that all adjudicated groundwater basins file with the state by April 1st. April 1st is tomorrow. And they have a website or web portal where you put in information with regards to the region, and that would be the Antelope Valley in our adjudicated region. Given the short time frame and the ability for us, since we don't have an official Watermaster Board yet to file this document, what we are looking to do right now is put the minimal amount of information within the portal and provide this letter, which I'll read to you. It's fairly short. But in essence, what it's trying to accomplish is to be in compliance with the law so that if for some reason, we have any of our jurisdictions has a grant or something that they're trying to get, and then potentially this could help, could be a hindrance to acquiring that. So what it basically says, and I'll just read it real quickly, it says the judgment in the Antelope Valley groundwater adjudication, this is a letter to Timothy Ross, he's with the Department of Water Resources, was entered to on December 15th, or December 2015. The parties to the judgment in accordance with these provisions are in the process of formulating the Water Master. It is expected that the Water Master would be seated in the next 30 to 90 days. Consequently, it's not possible for the Antelope Valley parties to submit all the data requested by Sigma by April 1, 2016. The parties in judgment have uploaded the following information to the adjudicated basin reporting system, that's that web portal, in compliance with Sigma for 2015. And this is what's important. This is the information that is published already that we can supply. And that would be the Antelope Valley judgment, the exhibits to the judgment, the total estimated water production for 2015, that'll be based on the court documents, estimated urban water use, estimated agricultural use, and state water project use. So that's the information, that's the only information that's intended to be uploaded into that portal. At this time, no additional detailed information is readily available. We understand that after submitting the information to the web portal, the information cannot be changed on the system. Leave it to the state. You put it in, but you can never change it. But it does say cannot be changed in the system. Additional data will be submitted in writing by the Water Master after the Water Master is fully constituted and approved by the court. So what we're anticipating here, we want to be completely open and honest with everybody so that everybody knows what everybody else is doing, because this is a concerted effort. You as landowners are kind of the landowner representatives. We're working with these three representatives here, and if there's a consensus to allow Wagner and Morsenor to submit this information on behalf of all the parties to be in compliance, that's what we're trying to accomplish by tomorrow's deadline. So if there's any questions about that, any clarifications, I'll try and answer them best I can.
Very good. At this point, I believe we can turn this meeting over to the landowner committee. I just want to get consensus from everyone that you would still like Holly and Patty to assist with administration and note-taking and noticing. Is that correct, committee?
Yeah, so.
Okay. Anything from Leo, Adam? Okay. Then we will leave you to going on with, I think today you're going to be discussing the process for electing your representatives to the board. I believe our next meeting is April 15th. And where will that be, Patty? Do you know? Is it Lancaster or is it back here? So we'll be back in the Palmdale Water District chambers. And at that point, we will have another meeting. We'll give you any updates if anything's occurred since then. And that you get on with, hopefully, your elections at that time. So, have a good afternoon. Any questions before we leave? If the committee wants to take over up here, that's fine, or whatever you guys would like to do. It may be helpful for you because you have the speaker system up there.
Hey, Marta.
I think the only way to know how to approach this is just maybe throw out what we've done. Again, I'm going to repeat that we're a large fractured group, and so it's been a little difficult. We haven't met with Randy yet. There's been some meetings between some of us, phone calls back and forth. I think the biggest issues we want to talk about today is what all the people on Exhibit 4, how they think the nominations should go. If the steering committee should nominate, or if we need to send out a mailer to all of Exhibit 4. I guess that's our first big question. Wanted to hear from what all the people think. John, can you shine some light on that? On the nominations for these two seats?
John, I'm going to be filing a motion with the court to interpret this judgment regarding the Watermaster formation. And it should be to the court by this coming Wednesday, latest a week from tomorrow. So.
In your filing is what exactly? Can you share that? I mean, you're going to...
No, right now I'm not, John. I don't.
Okay. Well, that being said, I guess we still got to go on with business. Right?
Yeah.
Understood your position on that. Anything from the audience? That any of the people here, how we should go about these nominations? Do you want the steering committee to do it? Do we put it out to mail for everybody on Exhibit 4 to get nominations?
Just a point of clarification. When someone speaks, if you know the name, could you give it so we will know who is
Speaking?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm Vivian Howell from, I'll start. I'm Vivian Howell from the city of Los Angeles.
Okay, all right.
But someone just spoke and I didn't get the name.
John, you can stay the Antelope Valley United Mutual Group.
Thanks, John.
So,
Also, there's only 5 people on the line. I could unmute them if you want them to be able to speak freely. Maybe they still have something to add. I don't know if you...
that's, as long as we don't hear background noise, that's
Okay.
great.
I'm gonna unmute them and see how it goes.
Okay.
I might have to mute them again. But...
I'm not the leader of this group by any stretch of the imagination. I guess I'm just the first one that opened his mouth today. Dennis was supposed to do all the talking. Any suggestions from anybody out there?
Andrew Warner from WDS. Not to open a can of worms, but it would seem that if you didn't invite everyone to participate via the mail, there might be some baggage that comes along at a later date. So just to get out ahead of that, you may want to notify people by mail. I think the people who care are here, but that's not always a reflection of the truth. So, you know, mail notification might make more sense.
Andrew, this is Dwayne Chisam. We did get a comprehensive mailing list for Exhibit 4. We've been working since the last meeting to acquire that. We've got a good list. So everyone that's on Exhibit 4 was notified of this meeting either through email or by mail itself. So in the future, we have a very good list from which to work from. So all notifications will go to everybody that is identified on Exhibit 4.
Andrew, did you have an idea on how to make the nominations?
I'm comfortable with where things stand, so no, I guess not.
You can be on the steering committee. Because that's where we're at.
Is it one vote, 1 acre, or one vote, one person? How does that work?
Well, that was going to be one of our next subjects that we were going to throw out there. So why don't we see if there's any Wendy, is there anything specific in the court order how we have to do this? I mean, that's the first question.
The only thing that is specific within the judgment itself is that the voting will be based on, it'll be a weighted voting based on the amount of water allocation that is contained in Exhibit 4. So if you're a person that has 100 acre-feet of allocation through Exhibit 4, then you get 100 votes. If you have 5,000 acre-feet, then you have 5,000 votes, and if you got 12 acre-feet, you got 12 votes. So that's how that's the only stipulation that's in the judgment itself.
Is that per seat or total? Because there's 2 seats available.
And it doesn't define whether it's per seat or a total amount, or it doesn't say whether it doesn't have any designation of, let's say you have 100 votes, you could put 50 votes on one seat and 50 votes on the other. It doesn't indicate that. In the document that that was prepared by the attorneys that represented you, that was referenced last time, which was sent out to all of the steering committee, and you have a copy of now. What they indicate on there is that you get to vote twice. In other words, you get to vote for each person. So if you have 100 acre-feet, you would vote for 2 people, and those 2 people would get 100 votes each. That's the way this document is written. I don't know if that's how you want to do it, but that's the way this is written.
Yeah, Dennis Atkinson, that's the way we read it, that's the way I think it should be. Is if there's 2 seats, you have 100 votes, you get to vote 100 and 100. You can't vote 200 and 0. You only get 100 and 100. If you don't want to vote for 2 people, you can vote 100 for one guy and forfeit your other 100.
Needs to be clarified that the list was put together by the attorneys. It's, the following language should require further discussion, so that was never said.
Oh, agreed.
Okay. I just wanted to bring it to attention.
Put it together by the attorneys.
Say again, John.
It needed more discussion. So all of the other items on there was a consensus
Yes.
of the participating parties,
And
with the exception of 18.1.1.
And if you would like, I can give you a little summary of what this document says.
That'd be good for everyone.
What this document was, and you got the parties that helped draft this document. And it's broken up into various sections, and it describes a voting process that was discussed by the attorneys that were involved. And I'll just do a highlight of what that process was that's conceived in this document. You can certainly change it. There's nothing that binds you to this. But I will indicate what was consensus and what wasn't, and so that everybody, so that's try to make that clear. The first section in this paper talks about duration. They anticipated the selection of 2 land representatives, and they were looking at a 2-year time, I believe. Also notices that there would be, which is the next section, and that talks about notifying all the landowners and maintaining a list of addresses for all the landowners on Exhibit 4, which I indicated that we have done. Would it be possible to see water? It's going to be tough here. They also had, as part of this process, what they call an inspector of elections. And this was, originally it was talked about that it would be James DeBoe. Is that the right pronunciation of his name? And he's the United States Department of Justice, the Air Force Base attorney. So he would oversee the election process to make sure it's fair and appropriate, and you know, it's kind of out of he's not a landowner, he doesn't have any stake in the process here. So and this was agreed upon, that he would have that process. So he would oversee the election process. He could come because he's out of Denver and works for the federal government. I'm not sure, what they'd be able to do, but he certainly could be on the phone for us. And then the next section in here is landowner seats. And as John Ukkestad mentioned, this was the section that was not agreed upon. This is something that needed some further discussion as to how that was exactly, whether there was going to be one representing a landowner that had over 1,000 acre-feet of production rights, and then one that had less. So, thank you. So so that was not agreed by the parties. That was the one provision that was not agreed upon. It might be a subject of discussion, although we might have to wait for the motion. And they describe in the next section they talk about nominations, and they have a process here where the inspector of nominations would open up on the website, nominations, and there'd be 30 days for anybody to nominate who was going to be on there. And everybody could see, because they could get on the website and look and see who's been nominated, who hasn't been nominated. And then following that nomination period, they would then issue out ballots. So James DeBow would issue out those ballots and email them out to everybody at that particular point. So everybody would know who's being nominated, they could get a ballot, and there'd be a statement of qualifications that's associated with that, some other information that's talked about here. So there's a little bit of, so when somebody got something, they'll kind of know who they are and who they represent and things like that. And then, the voting rights, then each of the parties shall have one vote each per acre foot as outlined below. And so this person would then email back your ballot or submit it to the court, or however they had you going to the particular place. And then they would just add up all those votes and determine who was the winning vote getter. So, and then there's a challenging process that's outlined here, where if any party wanted to challenge the vote, they could. They could go through that process. So those were the agreed upon process that the attorneys came up with a while back, and that's what was referenced and talked about last meeting when the attorneys were in the room and present. This was in January of 2016. So, with that in mind, that's kind of where that had developed. There is nothing that requires any of you to follow this, but as mentioned last time, it might be a starting point of where to go and at least how to do the voting process, the nomination process. And like you say, the thing that seems to be the sticking point is the voter representation. Who's going to be they're going to segregate, how you want your voting representation to occur. So. Well, I obviously, you have to mail out and get the ballots done by me too. Yeah, right.
Can we vote on whether we want to have 1,000 over and under, just have a one-time vote?
You sure can. This meeting's up to you, so you can do it how you'd like.
Does he have any input?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
No, as a potential nominee, I'm not even sure it's appropriate to comment.
You're on the steering committee.
Yeah, in case you didn't know, Randy, you got nominated to the steering committee as of the last meeting, so
You can
it
say
is
anything you
very
want.
appropriate for you to come.
He's aware of it.
I'm still listening at the moment.
Okay, fine. Here's what I'm gonna suggest. I think we need to get we haven't had the opportunity to get the 5 men together at one time. I think if there's not, I don't see a flow of input from anybody in the audience. So I think if we can get the steering committee together a couple times, come up with some recommendations on this, and then go from there. I mean, but this is the time to talk. I mean, you guys are here because you wanted to listen and talk. Gary?
This is gonna happen every 2 years, this voting?
Well, the items are how long the terms will be, who's actually, if it's going to be, the representation is going to be from a large landowner and a small landowner, and even how we're going to do the nominations. Nothing has been talked, nothing has been settled. Nothing has even been recommended at this point.
But over time, it's gonna be ongoing every couple of years, we're gonna have a vote in a new.
Yes, yeah,
So
and the number that just keeps coming up for everybody's 2 years. I think that's what Leo is. I think that's what Rob is.
So the process you set now is gonna be carried on and on.
It will be carried on.
So it needs to be set up.
And I think we
right.
have to consider staggering. I don't think we want to have elections for 2 people in 2 years. I think we should consider start off with a 3-year term and a 2-year term, and then that year we have an election, and we're not electing 2 new guys to sit on the board. This is going to be a complicated job.
I brought up in the past also that landowners, are you gonna tie the parcels of land to the landowners, so as time goes on and people sell their rights?
That needs to be discussed also.
Because if purveyors acquire them, you're gonna have less and less landowners.
Do the voting rights go with the water, or do they stop at that point? That's another topic. There's so much that we are going to have to talk about. This thing is full of holes. I think we all agree to that.
If it transfers to purveyors, then it's no longer tied to the land if they're using it for municipality reasons.
That's going to be up to the Watermaster to decide that, right?
That's why we need to discuss it with whoever the Watermaster is gonna be.
Well, I'll put it on the list of things that the steering committee has to discuss.
And you would probably want the APNs known, so in 10 years you might have not the same, you won't have water tied to land, it'd be from the municipality. You wouldn't want the purveyors voting for the landowners' seats. They already have 3 seats.
Intent to own the water.
Yeah, you want to
Or buy the vote, basically buy the vote.
Yeah.
There's been some consensus that if a purveyor takes over a landowner's land and takes over the water by any kind, that vote is retired. Because the conveyor cannot be voting landowner votes to sway the board to be 4 or 5 purveyors dictating to the Watermaster.
Then you should have the parcels.
Yeah, no, that'll all have to be nailed down. That's why getting the board started and getting moving is gonna be.
What is Tejon Ranch? Are they a purveyor for themselves? Are they a landowner? Or,
No, we're landowner, farmer.
but you're 51%. But what about your ties to AVEC? AVEC was in your deposition, weren't they? In the court case, the adjudication? I mean, are you too tight? AVEC already has 2 members on the board pretty much.
Yeah, we're not AVAC, Tone's not AVAC.
But you're pretty closely related to him.
We sold them some water. And we've been doing turnouts. They're the lead agency. So yeah, for the last 5 or 6 years, we've been doing refurbishment of turnouts down the aqueduct.
So if you develop your property, are you still considered a landowner if you're using your water for development purposes?
Yeah, because the water is owned by Tone Ranch, not by the partnership that's the developer.
Okay.
And that is planned to be, if you look at our financials, it's a line item, water sales, water distribution is a profit center for the ranch. So we're not gonna, I can guarantee you that they're not gonna give it to the house guy.
So if you take your property and put a development on it, you'll still be considered a landowner for that development? If, say one of us wanted to develop our property and use that, our water for like a municipality use, we'd still have a vote on the, as a landowner?
Yeah, if you still own the land.
So,
Dennis, the
Randy,
way,
I think Tony had his up too. You go.
oh, sorry, Tony, I didn't see it. The way I understand the general plan for Lancaster and Palmdale, the minute you sell your water for development, it has to fall under the municipality standards. So I would believe that you would be giving that up to the municipality. So once you gave your water over for houses, commercial, etc., you would there forfeit your right.
Well, the ranch has two kinds of water. They have table A water that they purchased and given to AVAC for to hold. That's not in this voting. And then they have groundwater for other operations, cattle, grazing, farming, all that kind of thing.
I was speaking to the groundwater for the Antelope Valley.
Right. That's all used for farming and grazing and cattle.
But I think your question's more general. It's kind of along the, your statement's a little more general. It's kind of along the lines of what Gary said. I think the House is split on that, how they feel about that. And that's going to be another topic of discussion. Mr. Ukkestad.
Is AVAC on Exhibit 4? They are, aren't they?
Yeah.
What if Galen, John, Van Dam, Eugene Nibiker sells their water rights to AVAC? Okay? AVAC has a vote on these overlying seats. So those votes would be put together, so they wouldn't only have the guaranteed seat, but they would have a seat that could control the votes of the overliers, or the landowners. Think about it.
That's another one of the holes we got to fill. George?
I was going to throw out, you were asking a way to nominate from the floor. Don't separate between large, small, medium, whatever. The law was set out that you had weighted voting according to your acre feet, and if guys that have less acre feet want to nominate somebody, nominate them, and vice versa. And then we have a selection of people to be voted on. We vote on it. If no one gets majorities, you know, if you don't have two getting majority, then you do the runoff process. Keep it simple, and not pick and choose between one group or another. It's all landowners with water, and it's been laid out by the court. We need to follow court order.
Would you like to nominate in person at our next meeting or something like that, or would you like to nominate on the internet?
I'll do either. I'll be at the next meeting most likely, but.
The trouble with that, George, I mean, here's like an email that I got from one of the guys on Exhibit 4. Has anyone noticed that not all the landowners are being represented in the proceedings to select the watermaster? And the nominations occurred within only those present at the meeting. So he's got a real beef about the way you want it.
No. You put it out, whether it's on the internet, mail,
okay.
whatever you want.
Okay.
I'm not saying to do it at a meeting. I'm
Okay.
just saying
I
from
misunderstood.
all the landowners on Exhibit 4, excuse me, all of them should have an opportunity in this 30 days to put in a nominee, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that, but not segregated into, we want over 1,000, less than 1,000. Throw that out. Just nominate people for the board with a good process that everybody gets the potential to nominate who they want to nominate. And we vote on that slate. So
Randy's on the phone and he's on the steering committee. Can we just as a group right now say if we want to go, we agree that that should be go out to the website as the attorneys? Okay. Randy, are you in agreement with the way the attorneys have laid it out that we should do the nominations?
That sounds good to me. I don't know why you differentiate between how much water rights somebody has as far as whether they can be a nominee or not.
Okay, so Dwayne, we all agree then? I guess we all concur?
Yes, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, does the, in the voting, is it going to be the two highest vote getters? They become the reps, or are you going to have to achieve some minimum percentage of the
My
total number of
understanding
acre
is a simple
feet, or
majority.
how's that going to work?
Simple majority, according to the court order.
Well, if you have, 10 or 15 nominees, it's likely that nobody's going to get, 50%. Only one is possible to get 50%. So my notion is, maybe we should just have the two highest vote getters, and it'll simplify the process.
That's the way we see it too. Yeah.
When do you think our mailing list is good enough to?
Yes, I do. I do. We went through a fairly extensive research process in the last 2 weeks to be good on this.
But just a quick clarification on voting, let's say Crystal Organic has 100 votes. Do we vote 100 for, did you say 100 for each seat? So you vote it 2 times? Okay. But only 100 can go to one person at a time? Okay, so you can't stack them?
You can't stack.
Good, okay. That's just, make sure I understand it, thank you.
Tony?
This is Randy, I got a question on that though. If there's 2 seats available, and let's say there's, I don't know, a total of 10 nominees, okay, but you're voting for one seat, and you're voting for the other seat, 100 votes for each seat? How is that gonna work when you get, unless you identify each nominee for one of 2 seats or something like that?
Well, I guess you could potentially cast your vote for multiple people, but you wouldn't want to do that.
If you had 100, you can vote 100 for one and 100 for another.
I think the ballot would be very simple. You would have the nominees, and it would say vote for 2 of the above, and then the whoever's doing the tallying would say, okay, this is coming from ABC company. They have 100 votes. They voted for these 2, so they'll put the tally of the 100 votes to each one and go through the process.
I think Randy's example was that the person with 200 votes, he could put 50 for one guy and 50 for another and 50 for another and 50 for another. It doesn't make any sense if you're trying to get your... You only vote for 2? Okay. Randy, did that clear that up? You only vote
You
for
get
2.
100, if you're allowed 100 votes, okay, and let's say there's 10 nominees, so you vote 100 votes each time for one of 2 nominees?
Right, only 2 times. You only get 2 votes.
What happens if somebody wants to only vote for one nominee?
Then
Yes,
he's throwing away half of his votes.
So that's not very fair. Maybe they don't,
Then they have to
you're
mark.
doubling up the votes when you vote twice. Why do we have to vote twice? You have a list of people, you can pick a person and put your vote down where you want it to go. Yeah, so there's gonna be there's gonna be at least 2 people that are going to be ahead.
In essence, whether you call it 50% of your votes goes to one seat and 50 to the other, or all of them to one and all of them to the other, it doesn't matter. The count will be the same percentage-wise. It's just, you can only
Well, I
vote
was
for 2.
just told it wouldn't if a person didn't wanna vote for 2.
Well,
Can
you've
I
got
ask
vote-
something?
if
Will the
you
people that
wanna
are
vote for
in the
one,
group
then
announce
half
who
your
they
votes go to one.
who they are and who they're
Yeah, it's
speaking
not
for?
thrown away, though, but I guess they could say I vote twice for the same
There's
person.
been 4 people talking.
Okay, the last, okay, George, Mr. Ukas, John wanted to say your name, so we know.
Richard Nelson?
Pardon me?
Richard Nelson, hello, John.
All right, Richard, how
And
you
then-
doing?
All right,
George Capello.
George Capello.
And the group you're with?
Willow Springs.
Thank you.
Yeah, if we just could get you guys, give your name, who you're with, so we can write it for the record. Gary Cody.
This is John Lucas.
Go ahead.
Well, I think this is, Robert, this is something we're gonna have to just hammer out in the steering committee. I mean, we can hammer it out over hearing it today, which is good. The steering committee's been assigned to hammer it out. We gotta get Randy together with it.
And we want input on it. I mean, it's up to you guys, whatever direction you want it to go in. So right now is the time to speak up and let us know what you guys want.
This is Randy.
Acre feet, you should be able to apply everything equally and weigh it in your favor anywhere you want it to be. And I think you're right.
a little confused. If you do that, then you really kind of skew it to where big vote block voters can run this thing up and just put who they want in, where it doesn't level the playing field much for everybody.
It doesn't level at doubling them either.
No, not doubling.
Yeah.
Not doubling. You get your votes for one of two seats.
When you stagger the seats, you're only gonna be voting for one person each year. When we stagger it, each
Okay,
year
now-
there's only gonna be one person
So
on the
this is
board.
not on a one election then? You're saying,
We're trying to
We're
get
saying
both of them at the
you're
same time.
staggering them at the first time you'll be voting for two people.
It's the same concept.
It's the same
You
concept.
can vote 1 month for one and
No,
1 month
it's
for
not
the
the
next.
same. Each one is a different election.
Okay, say we have one director this month and one director next month, so everybody votes for one guy this month, and all your votes go for the next month. What's the difference?
Well, it's not gonna work that way,
Why not?
because it's not.
Well, it's because you don't want to be
Let
That's
me-
normally how it works.
Let me say something here. For those of you that weren't in the middle of the arguments at the court, we worked really hard to get two separate seats away from the purveyor so that we would retain a voice, because it was going the other way, that it was all gonna be dictated by the purveyors. So these two seats are really hard fought. And, you know, we have two people that we need to elect to this board so we can get this thing moving. And after the first time, I think Tony's correct, there's gonna be one guy up for re-election. And that's gonna be a vote, and you're gonna vote whoever you want in that group that's gonna be running. But you've kind of lost me on this. If you don't vote for two people, you don't wanna vote for two people.
You don't have two separate groups of nominees, however, you have one group of nominees, and you have people that have a single vote of a certain amount of acreage.
Everybody has the vote per their allocation from the court. And in this first election, they get to vote for two people.
That's right, but you don't have two separate lists. You're not saying, okay, here's my vote as a citizen on this group of candidates, here's the second group, here's my vote. You have a single list of candidates.
That's correct, because anybody can nominate anybody in the list.
Right. So I'm saying that people shouldn't have to divide their vote up if they don't want to.
Well, then,
If everybody else is, say a person has 1,000 acre feet, he's voting 1,000 plus 1,000, he's voting 2,000. Another person says, I only want one person. Say he's got one vote, he should be able to vote two votes then, for one person.
That's called stacking, and I don't think it's in the.
It's stacking the way you're doing it.
This is exactly why, John Ukkestad, this is exactly why we're filing the motion next week. And I think we're going through a lot of stuff that's going to be determined by the judge. Today, the judge will make a ruling, we're putting it before the judge. There's a lot of things in this, as John said, there's a lot of holes in this. We're not asking to go ahead and amend the judgment, it's clarification, it's the judge's interpretation. So I think right now we're wasting a lot of time. I'll have the motion is drawn. Hopefully I'll have my deck signed by Wednesday, the latest is going to be a week from tomorrow. And then you guys can see our position, you can see what we're asking the judge to do. And I think it's going to settle all this stuff. The court's got jurisdiction over this whole thing, okay? So hopefully we'll have it ready by Wednesday. The latest will be a week from tomorrow. And then the judge will have hearings on it. You guys, people, your attorneys can file objections, which I imagine with this motion, there's going to be a lot of objections, okay?
And this could go on for months and months.
No, I don't think so, no, it can be done on ex parte.
Nevertheless, we're still assigned with the
Okay,
judge,
so
and
I don't,
we have-
you
we
can
have to-
go ahead and just muddle through this and continue on
We
this.
don't have a choice.
It doesn't,
And again, here's the deal, John, we're under a timeline to make an appointee, two appointees to the Water Master Board. If
Where
we
did
don't, it'll be appointed by the judge.
Gary, where did the timeline come from? I don't know the timeline. It's not in the stipulated judgment, physical
For
solution.
next year, we have to have something in place by next
No,
year.
it's, first place the letter's going out is from 60 to 90 days. It's going to be sent to the Department of Water Resources. Am I correct, Ryan? Okay, and what we're saying, that we should have a water master in place, a water master board in place within 60 and 90 days. Am I correct?
Well, I could tell you this, all the other purveyors have selected their water masters.
It's a little bit simpler for the purveyors to
True.
do it.
I
You had
agree.
2 seats as a given, D40, and AVAC, that was a given. So you only had 11, I believe it was 11 or 12 possibly, public agencies that had to select one representative. So that's a pretty, you're talking about, how many we got, hundreds?
152. So I agree with you. But again, we all just need to work towards the same direction and try and resolve this. And
Well, I've met numerous occasions with certain people that, you know, we've tried to work out a resolution. And so it's not like we haven't been trying here.
right.
I got a question, I'm confused. Under the small water right holders that have like 1,000 and less, if you broke them into one representative and the big, larger ones had in one representative, maybe this would solve it. It seems like people are worried about the large acreage holders having control. Would that be, solve it, simply have, okay, break the groups down, okay, everybody under 1,000, you have your rep? Is that what this, I'm reading in this? Is this, doesn't that seem like the simplest
That's
answer?
where we're probably at our biggest impasse. John and I have met, and we met with George Lane, and just trying to figure it out. They're adamant, the mutuals are adamant that it's under 1,000 acre-feet for one rep. The large owners are adamant that it would be.
You have 2 reps, and you have, that's 2 groups, so that gives, that would seem like everybody would be represented accordingly.
That'd be 3 to 1 instead of 3 to 2. You
Well,
only
right
have to
now
get
it's-
1 guy if you got 2.
Well, if you put Tajon on, you got 3 for AVIC, and
No, we're not an AVEC vote.
well, what's your 33,000 homes in Los Angeles? What's the water for that? Where are you gonna get that water from?
We brought it in, we're bringing it in.
So that has nothing to do with the pumping?
Not right now, does it?
Not right now, but
right now.
when you put AVIC, and that's what people are worried about. At least they'd have one voice on the board.
You know, John and I had a conversation about, I asked him what he was worried about if 2 large landowners were on this board. And he never gave me an answer. But he said, what are you afraid of, somebody from a mutual? Well, right off the bat, the first thing that scares a farmer is jacking that acre-foot price up. You know, that we have to pay up to $5 an acre-foot. For people that are in mutuals that only use 3 or 4 acre-feet, if it goes up $4 or $5 a foot, it means very little. $20, $25. For a farmer, it's huge. So we want to see those prices held down. We don't want to see exorbitant prices per acre foot. And that's one of the fears. Every farmer has that in the back of his mind. What are they going to stick me for the water?
You don't pass your cost on to your alfalfa field?
Oh gosh, no. Do you not know agriculture? I'm selling hay now for a loss. So don't talk to me about putting it on the hay.
So,
Yeah, one thing, I'm Rod Seacutter, I farm pistachios on 100th Street, west in Hay. I'm a lessee, long-term lessee, but my notion is if you're gonna split this 1,000 acres for 1,000 acres for the above 1,000, and have 2 seats that are divided by that acreage, that then you divide the vote, that only the large vote for the large, the 1,000 acre plus landowners, and then the other group is everybody else below 1,000 acres. And so then you have 2 voting groups and 2 representatives, one representing the 1,000 minus, 1,000 plus.
And I do think that there is a difference between the mutuals and agriculture, because agriculture, you are using that water to make a profit. Mutuals, the water goes only to the residents, there's no profit made. By design, a mutual is designed for every dollar that's made to go back into the mutual, not into anybody's pocket. So there is a difference.
And tap water, I feel like there's two kinds of water users in this valley. It's either tap water or it's people that make a living with their water. I don't see it as more than just two different kinds of people. And tap water people are well represented in this valley. And agriculture is not. They've kicked agriculture pretty bad. They've cut us more than 50% on our pumping. Think about your business, whatever it is. Think about taking 50% less for your product, or 50% less product to produce. You don't think we've been strangled? So we want good representation here, and we feel like we can get it better through big landowners that earn their living with the water.
George Capella, besides, if farmers don't grow something, make a profit, what do you think you put in your mouth to eat?
I understand that.
Okay, well, that answers a lot of questions right
We pay
there.
handsomely for it, we do.
You pay cheap compared to the world.
Well, yeah, no doubt.
But you may think it's handsome, but all I'm saying is, you can't compare those two on the same scale. A business making money, providing food and fiber for people to buy versus you living in a residence, paying just your water bill.
Yeah,
How
but
much
that
of your
water's
taxes come back,
providing light
how much
for
of your
me.
tax money come back to the Antelope Valley? Aren't you with Grimway?
What's that?
Aren't you with Grimway?
Yep.
How much of your taxes come back to the Antelope Valley?
I have no idea yet.
I don't think you have any taxes
I'm not
come back to the
accounting.
Antelope Valley.
I can tell you how much
Galen,
of
as far
ours
as,
is.
you know, Galen, you're forgetting that we have people in the mutuals that have small orchards that sell it out on the corners, you know, pears, peaches, pistachios. Most of the mutuals are all on 2.5 acres. They've gone ahead and gone against people, your enemies, the people that you guys are claiming are screwing you, and have helped you guys out. And now it comes down to nitty gritty, screw the mutuals. Or we don't trust the mutuals because they can turn on the tap. That's not fair at all, Dave.
Yeah, we're not after you, and we would be looking after your interests. You and I talked, and we said we wanted the cheapest water taxes. It's like a tax that we can get, and that we would be more apt to look after you than the small mutuals that use 3 or 4 acre feet a year.
And we'd be more apt to look after you guys.
Well, you know what, I think we would look out for each other, John. Nobody is gonna fight for your 2.5 acre pistachios harder than I will. And all the ag people, because that's farming. That's needed. That's our heart, that's our love, that's our roots. So we would fight, and you know I would fight for it. And I think everybody that we've been talking about would fight for that.
And you know I'd fight for your rights. And I
Right.
have fought for your rights,
And
all of
one-
you guys.
And one thing you have to know, John, is we all have houses. We all pay water bills. So, you know, you're not alone. And we want cheap water rates for everybody.
Well, I think what the bottom line, Gary, is that if you guys think that the intent of this settlement was to give the large landowners or the farmers those 2 seats, and that was never the intent. Going all the way back to, now you take a look at when we were in the 1.5 year of Waldo settlements, take a look at that, John, and see how that, in that Waldo settlement, how that was going to be on that Watermaster seats, how that was going to be distributed. It's going to be a large landowner and a small landowner. Now, you, John, and Gator, you guys supported that. It didn't work out on that settlement, but that's what it was, and this is what we felt was fair to everybody in the valley if that came into the settlement. That's all. Think about it, John. So you guys, Dennis, you sat there in the Waldo thing. So did Galen. Gary, you weren't there, but we went. Gene Niviker back here, he was there. Go pick up your Waldo settlement and take a look and see how that spells out.
We also agreed with 20 or 25% cut.
Yeah, it was a lot different.
I'm just saying that's one thing.
It was the county undermined it, but it was a good agreement for everybody. Tony.
I agree with John. I think we could sit here and debate this for a long time. And I just submit that the committee has heard the various comments here. I think this is gonna be an ongoing process. I think if the committee allows itself to be tied up every time one person or one group feels that they have an interpretation, they can go to court and they can try and get an interpretation. But I think we have to, in good faith, try and go forward here and be productive about this. A lot of time and energy was spent putting together that stipulated judgment. A lot of time, a lot of energy, as Dennis said. There was nothing in there about landowner group under 799 acre feet or 1,200 acre feet or 2,000. Where that line gets drawn by John, I don't know, because that was obviously never discussed, okay? And so I respectfully submit, you take the comments, you go forward in good faith, and to the extent any of us have a problem, if we think that you are going outside the boundaries of what was agreed to, we have our processes that we can do.
I personally agree with that, but I thought this was the time that we had to have our ears open and our mouths shut, so we could hear what everybody wanted to throw at us. And then now I think the steering committee's got to go to work.
I agree with that.
If I can say it, it would be most appropriate if both representatives would fairly represent any landowner that was there, whether they have 1 acre foot or 1,000. Why do we have to draw a line here between us? We have more similarities than differences. The fact is, we're not the cities. The cities took all of us. We were driven into this. We have reasons to work with each other, not to fight each other.
Absolutely. I agree 100% with that. So, and we all need to talk it through and make the best selection.
We don't have to take the suggestion, do we, of this 1,000 dividing line between the two groups? And so it can be just an open situation where it's two people that have the most votes, that's it? Whether they're large, small, whatever they are. We have that option, do we not?
I think that, you today, I think, but if.
But I think after the court filings, then we'll see what's gonna happen. So it's very difficult to move forward without waiting to see what's happening.
I don't understand the court filings. What's that all about?
We're assuming, I'm gonna make an assumption that they're
It's
gonna.
exercising a right that Tony just,
Yeah.
that we have that right.
They wanna split.
Well, what, another group wants to make the determination that you're being asked to make?
No, the court, who has
The
jurisdiction
court. They
over
want the
these.
court to rule on it.
But they're making a proposal for the court to rule on, right?
Right.
And that's what you're doing, or we're doing right here, right now, right?
Correct.
But again, we wanted to talk things over and see what your guys' thoughts are on the direction the steering committee needs to go in. So we appreciate all the input.
Do you need a motion? Or you take this and you guys are gonna do it?
Well, at the last meeting, it seemed like the consensus was the people that got nominated were going to be a steering committee to do what we're trying to do right here. Get the thing going, get our ballot out, get the votes in, get 2 people elected for the board, so the board could get going. Because we haven't started looking for water masters or anything like that, and I'm pretty sure that the purveyors have already got people lined up for the water master job. And, we need to be okay with the water master. But we don't know who that is yet.
Dennis, do you have a feeling that the 3 have already made a decision who the water master is going to be?
I would be my gut bet.
So 3 are controlling so what's good of the other, 3 are controlling, what good is the other 2 seats?
Well, hopefully we can sway them to somebody different if we don't like that person.
Just a clarification, the water master engineer selection has to be unanimous.
Of the 5
So is the attorney.
Remember, that was in the very beginning.
No,
That was the unanimous.
So, Vivian Howell,
Is it Lillian or Lydian?
V-I-V-I.
Oh, Vivian.
Point of, our regular attendee isn't here right now, but just a point of clarification. So those that were nominated last meeting will be part of a list of nominees, and any other nominees, once they send out through electronically or snail mail, a call for additional nominees. And so within 30 days, you have to nominate whoever, if you have another nomination. Am I correct? Am I getting that correct?
I think that's where we're going.
Okay, and then as another point of clarification, that's great, is back to the Wagner and Boydsnor letter to Tim Ross. Is that gonna affect the timeline that is in this letter?
I don't believe so.
Am I wrong that I was wondering, who's gonna give those estimated ag water estimates?
Bob Wagner, and various people will get the information. They're not gonna make that.
And Dwayne, can I ask you a question? Is he using the 11-12 numbers? Is Wagner using 11-12 numbers, or is he using the numbers that were approved up on the, that he checked and approved on the judgment?
It's my understanding that he's gonna be looking for numbers from 2015. So he'll be calling various representatives in order to come up with what those numbers are.
Doesn't have to put the numbers down by
Tomorrow.
tomorrow?
Yeah.
So when's he gonna start calling people?
I'm sure he's doing it right now.
Well, I don't know.
My phone just rang.
Have you been called, John?
Pardon me?
Have you been called?
I'm keeping mine off the list.
So what, can you guys give us an idea of what the timeline is relative to the meeting on the 15th? What do you anticipate happening between now and then, relative to what we've been discussing? The notification of everybody, the nominations, the voting?
I'm just gonna blurt it out. I'm thinking, from my personal perspective, is have a steering committee meeting really, really soon. I'll be on the same page, talk to Dwayne, say, okay, send them out. And give them so many days to respond to the nominations.
That meeting's on the 13th, not the 15th. Sorry. Wednesday, I'm sorry.
The 13th? Okay.
April 15th.
April 3rd.
That's why he's here.
And that meeting's to be held at,
Okay.
Did you guys hear that? The meeting's gonna be on the 13th, not the 15th.
13th, not the 15th?
Correct.
What time?
Same time. Same time, right?
2 o'clock again?
Yes.
And that's gonna be over here.
Here.
April 13th, 2 o'clock here, Palmdale, Wednesday.
I know you're going off the list on 4, right? You want to check that list and make sure everybody on 4 is in the adjudication area and hasn't been given some rights that they don't deserve, and votes.
Is that a trick question? Do you know?
That's a trick question, John, I sure do.
I don't even know what to do on that one.
So you're saying there's people on Exhibit 4 that should be...
Saying there's at least one person on Exhibit 4 that has voting rights, and they're not even in, their property is not even in the adjudicated boundaries. I'm saying at least one.
Is that gonna be in your filing?
My recommendation,
Very good, Dennis.
No, I'm serious.
No.
John, my recommendation on that would be to take that to the steering committee, and we can discuss that.
Yeah.
The judgment says Exhibit 4, and if there's someone that shouldn't be on Exhibit 4, then you should change Exhibit 4, file a motion, do the thing, change Exhibit 4, because it's, you can't...
That takes an amendment.
I understand that, but my point is that you once you have a judgment, you want to do what the judgment says. And if the judgment's wrong, and everybody agrees it's wrong, you'll change it. But to say, well, we're not gonna take care of this part of the judgment because so-and-so, and then not do it there. That's what, because it's very specific.
I said it wasn't in our motion. That's all I said.
I understand. All I'm saying is that even though somebody the Exhibit 4 may be wrong, you have to change that before you can avoid them not getting a vote, That's not within the Water Master's authority.
I would say that's why the APN numbers are crucial to the exhibit.
I
With the
agree.
water master, everybody should be, have their APNs
Agreed.
for issues or failure, in, just like that, and it should be.
I agree, and, you know, I'm sure that's one of the first order of business for the Water Master Board is to get a comprehensive list of APN members, because ultimately, that's how they're going to do the taxes. So you have to have a good set of APNs, otherwise they're not going to be able to get the taxes done.
We have a question in regards to whoever gets voted into these two positions. How accessible are they required to be to the public? I mean, are they supposed to have their phone on 24/7, or they can't talk privately? What does the law state? I think whoever accepts that nomination needs to be aware of that.
Yeah, the Water Master Board is going to be subject to the Brown Act. So probably one of the things, especially for members who aren't familiar with the Brown Act, will probably have some kind of training or an understanding of what Brown Act requirements are. There are things about serial meetings where you can't have two directors go talk to one director to go to another director, and daisy chain kind of meetings to come up with a conclusion, or have information. So there is very specific requirements that are necessary when you take on this task, and the judgment specifically indicates that these will be Brown Act type meetings, just like board of directors for AVEC or city councilman or any other elected body. They're subject to those.
Are you allowed to meet with everybody on Exhibit 4, or does it have to be done in this atmosphere?
You have to. One person can meet with anyone that they would like. But if you have, let's say for instance, you had 3 of the Water Master Board members together, then that would be a violation of the Brown Act because you have a majority there.
So you can't be meeting in that situation.
Right, yeah.
Does the 700 form?
I would imagine there would be, yeah.
So there's a lot more than just voting yes or no.
Explain the 700 form for those who don't know.
Yeah.
Just on the surface, you got to divulge every investment and
Yes.
source of income
Yes.
you have.
Fair Political Practice Act requires you to devote all of your outside financial interests that may have an influence on your ability to serve. So, for example, if I just completed mine, I'm a very fairly poor person. I don't have anything of any consequence, so my form is really simple to do. But if you had stock in, let's say for instance I had stock in Cajon Ranch, I would have to notify the Fair Political Practice Commission that I had stock in Cajon Ranch because it may affect how I perform my job. And so that's what it's intended to do, is to make sure that the public is aware of any potential conflicts of interest that has to do with your financial situation.
It's all public record, right?
It's all public record.
Yeah. Bare your soul if you want to be a board member.
Yeah, understand that being part of this is going to require a certain amount. And that's why 2 years is probably a good period, because
alternate position in case somebody got sick or there was an issue there. So a third person would have to be, or landowner would have to be appointed to a alternate position.
What, for
Have
the
you guys
steering
thought
committee?
about that?
For the steering committee or for?
The Water Master Board.
For
The Water Master Board. Our fear is that if somebody, something, God forbid, happens, and I think that alternate needs to sit in on the, all the meetings. I would advise that, just so they're up to speed with what's going on.
Could it be that the third vote getter could be the alternate, or we wouldn't have to hold a separate election?
that's certainly within your prerogative to determine.
Go ahead, Adrian.
Sure, Adrian Rucka, a small landowner. There was at several of the Lancaster Hall meetings when the other groups were talking about their establishment, the water master. All of them talked about like an advisory committee or an advisory board that works behind then the water master representative. And so is that something that maybe as something you discuss with the steering committee could talk about, bring back to us, where that panel, maybe that's where we get more of the equal representation, the small landowner, the mutual, I'll throw out the dairy or the carrot grower, whatever, on that advisory group, and then that alternate would be someone on that board already. Just as an idea. I mean, I feel we're all in here, we should be of the same voice, and there's definitely not, which slows down this system, but maybe as there've been talk of others of this advisory committee or panel, some of them had like a 9-panel, if I recall. Is that something?
Yeah,
That could be
definitely. So
to
that's-
help the group unite better?
Right, and that 9-board steering committee for the directors would be very representative of Exhibit 4. The additional representation, I think that's where it should go.
I think it's consensus up here that we all want John to be on that advisory board.
Except for John.
John ukkestad. And we want people like the rock companies, the gravel companies, and then different people in the mutuals, and from all facets of the community. Larry Rotman would be my first choice, because he knows the valley so well. But yeah, we're all in agreement in having everybody on the advisory, because it just makes it that much better.
Larry Rotman would be a very good choice.
Thank you.
This judgment affects everybody.
So just to summarize, if I understand the steering committee, is that what you're intending to do is form a landowner advisory committee met of 9 or 10 or 11 or how many members you want to select to that committee that would meet on a regular basis, probably a certain period before the board meetings, with your representatives on the Water Master Board to discuss all the issues, and then those board members would go to that board meeting having that information. And that would be something you'd have to coordinate amongst yourselves, but that's kind of the way in which you can get all the voices of all the landowners, large, small, and different types of commercial processes and others.
Kind of how the Congress is supposed to work.
Yeah.
And the third vote getter in this election could be the head of the advisory committee, because he's next in line to be
sounds like
on the board, and he could be the mutuals, the pump guys.
No, that sounds like it would certainly give a voice. And then, you could certainly also allow the public to come in at any time to that advisory committee and talk with you. And like I say, that's outside of the judgment, but it's something that's within your prerogative to be able to do. And, that would be, and then if the vote didn't go the way that the group wanted, and you come back the next time, you could talk about what happened, so.
I think Vivian had one more question.
Point of clarification. Now, this landowners advisory committee, when you say it's outside Dwayne of the stipulation, then we're not talking about the advisory committee that's named in the stipulation that also needs to be seated, which is, as a read, and I could be wrong, but it's not predicated on the water master determining who that advisory committee is.
Right, and that's the difficulty in talking about the advisory committee, and because there is an official advisory committee that the Water Master Board will establish before they select the Water Master engineer. So that committee, and there's another debate about who's on that committee and how's that going to be organized and all that thing that the Water Master Board has to work out together once they have the 5 members. So, but these are kind of internal organizations within each group, and like I say, the public water suppliers have got 2 representatives, or 1 representative And then all of the representatives are in their steering committee, if I'm right. So they meet, talk with their, who's gonna be representing them with regards to what their feelings are, and they go and they do their vote. It's this very similar thing as what they're proposing here, is you would have a steering or advisory committee that would meet on a regular basis. And then, you know, you'd be able to communicate directly with your representative as to how you'd like to see the vote go. And, you know, however you process that, or the steering committee works out its own rules and regulations, that's amongst themselves.
Yeah, we feel that the steering committee is basically gonna be telling the water master, the direction to go in. So our belief is, with your guys' input to the steering committee, small pumpers, large pumpers, everybody in that group is gonna be very important to give the water masters their position, what they want done. So it's very important that you guys, you know, have your say and get your input.
Kind of decided here today is that the group that got nominated at the last meeting is gonna get together and have a meeting and try and get some kind of letter that's going to go out for nominations for 30 days. And then the second part of that is going to be probably another letter if you want to serve on the advisory committee, because we're going to need an advisory committee, and see how much trouble we're having getting all together on the first piece. So if somebody has a burning desire to go to this next meeting with us before the 13th, now would be a good time to raise your hand. John?
Yeah, it's very unfair, because Randy is just being brought into this process. So I think that, I think it'd be fair if I did sit in with Randy.
Yeah, no problem. Can Randy be at the next meeting, John?
He's on the phone.
Randy, can you, well, we've got
Yeah, we'll give you a call,
Okay.
and we'll get some dates from you.
Okay, I'm gonna be out of town for a little while, but I should be able to call in.
Okay, maybe you can give us some dates, Randy, that work good for you, and we'll work it around your schedule. We feel it's very important for you to be also in on the meetings.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I won't be back in town until the 25th of April.
Okay.
So you won't be at that meeting.
Just have John.
John,
Something needs to happen, sure, that, obviously.
you want to stand in for Randy?
Yes,
That way you can give him
and I'll keep it open.
All right, we've got a proxy for you.
Okay.
All right. Anything else, guys?
John's the only one that wants to join the next meeting.
Actually, I think you did a good
No, I
job,
think
guys.
you know.
Thank you.
Dennis, the next, you're saying it's kind of like me, and that's just to give input to the 5-member advisory board?
That's this group trying to come up with what we're gonna present at the next meeting on the 13th.
Steering committee meeting, and we'll be talking about what we just all went through. And we appreciate you guys coming out and putting in your input. I definitely want to work hard for you and get you all the water we can get.
Cheap.
Cheap.